A very good evening to all the attendees, and thank you all for joining this industry talk today in evening session. So along with me on screen, you can see Professor Dr. Vishwajay Chatterjee, Vice Chancellor for University of Engineering Management, Jaipur, and Professor Ajay Singh, who is the guest and the keynote speaker for today. So thanks to our VC sir for giving me this opportunity to moderate this industry talk session today. And I welcome you, Professor Ajay, on behalf of entire IEM UEM group, and wish that today's session will be a good learning for all the attendees from engineering and management background. So before we start the session, I'll take a minute to introduce Professor Ajay. Professor Ajay Singh is a business and operational SCM leader with about 30 years of experience in strategic and tactical supply chain solutions in varied industries such as specialty chemicals, electronics and electricals, telecom, automotive industry, steel sector. So over his career, he has been associated with many Aquapharm Chemicals, Cyient Limited, Ericsson India, L&T, Finolex Cables, Llyods Steel Industries. At top management, very recently, he has also been associated with DY Patil University as a professor for supply chain. His focus is always to emphasize heavily on customer approach and analytics in supply chain business. So about the topic, I'd like to brief that the talk is based on supply chain design, model and scope, the flexibility in SCM model with improvements in the process and capabilities, and the upcoming opportunities and competitive advantages post COVID-19 in global as well as Indian manufacturing. So that's a brief about Professor Ajay Singh and the topic for today. From here, I'll hand it over to you, sir. So you may please address the attendees. Thank you, sir.
Okay, good evening, Dr. Chatterjee, good evening, Dr. Gurnani, and all the colleagues and members attending this session. Though this topic is very heavy as per the Friday evening is concerned, as we always talk about in our industry language, that the Friday evenings are always be a tough for discussing or presenting anything. But on keeping a lighter mode, as I'll be discussing more on the complete supply chain efficiency, how the global perspective. So my whole presentation will be on the three parameter. The first one is the introduction, what briefly the Dr. Gurnani has already given. As some project work which I have completed in my last 28 years of be completed in my assignments. And then the main content of my presentation will be focusing in the three areas, basically supply chain design, model, and the efficiency. Then we'll move it to the post-COVID scenario, that how the things have been changing in the worldwide supply chain network, especially. And then the last portion will be on the opportunity and the new advantages. Okay, and the last session will be definitely on the Q&A, which I'll be, though the subject is very heavy, and maybe I think it will be, I don't know how it will be beneficial or it will be like sound to you, but we'll continue with that, and if at all anything will be there, you can connect it later on. So going into the next slide, which will be talking about my introduction basically. So as the Professor Dr. Gurnani says about me, about throughout my career, I've been into the business and operation in a supply chain management in the various MNC and Indian MNCs companies. To brief about my education, I've done my Bachelor of Science way back in 1988. Did my PG diploma in materials management from Indian Institute of Materials Management way back in 90s. And I did my MBA specialization in marketing, because at that moment there was no specialization in supply chain or materials. So I did it in the marketing in way back in 1993 and started my career. And I am very keen learner, and as you see, currently also I'm doing my PhD, which I've joined last year at the Sri Balaji University in Pune, specialization in operation in supply chain management. And I've been certified by various agencies like PMI for project management. I did a Six Sigma, Lean Six Sigma. Then I am an expert in dangerous goods handling for air and sea cargos. Singo model, one of the like lean concept from the Utah University, USA, I got certification, and especially from the Jebel University, I got it from the Lean Six Sigma bronze model. So this is as far as my education is concerned. I'll just highlight about some of the projects and key achievement in SCM. So you will be able to link it, which I'll be talking about the whole supply chain efficiency model in my subsequent slides. So the key projects and key achievements which I have outlined here is basically at 93, 97 was my first organization where I was working on the Greenfield project, where the entire setup of the ASRS is Automotive Storage and Retrieval System for any storage system like what we have currently being adopted by all e-commerce industry, whether it is Amazon, Flipkarts, or Walmarts or whatnot. So that time, 1 lakh or 1.5 lakh square feet warehouses is supposed to be a biggest warehouses in those days, and I'm talking about 25, 28 years back. And that time there was no ERP as SAP ERP was there. So there was Indian ERP developed by Ramco Marshall. ERP is basically enterprise resource planning, integrating all your in the network in your organization, like financial module, production module, materials module, everything linking into that. So that was the and I was basically the leader or core member for materials management and sales and distribution module. So that was one of the, and I was a very keen member on that learning and implementing phase. Moving next, I had been doing a lot of greenfield projects in materials management and various topics I have done it. So currently in my last assignments, if you see in 2007 and 11, in the electronics manufacturing, when I moved it, JBL is one of the multinational company having worldwide facility around 105 places in the globe. And it was a lot of projects we did it. I've just outlined some of the projects where right from the saving potential from 5 million to 10 million projects, it was completed by the whole team. And I was one of the key member and leader of the teams. Then 2011-16, Telecom 4G gear manufacturing. By the way, I'll tell you that, okay, 5 years I've been in Jaipur almost from 2011 and 16. I was staying in Jaipur for that, working with a company called Ericsson India, headquartered at Gurgaon. And we had that plant which was closed at 2017 because it was there was no visibility of that after 4G when the 5G has started. But a lot of sites we have developed during that 4G networking for the Airtel and with various other members. And that was the I'll just brief it my contributions, and then we'll go back to the main slide. Going to the next slide. We'll just move it to the next slide where I'll be talking more on the part of the supply chain model, our main topic, the content of today's. So it will be covering the design, model, and the scope. We'll be briefly discussing about the flexibility of supply chain model, and then the capabilities and tools and tackles, and how sales and operation planning process schematic is being useful tool for a whole supply chain management model. So I'll be talking about that, and then we'll move it to the current accentuating the weak links in the during the COVID and the post-COVID. So this is the content of our main presentation of today. So next slide, please. So as we know, the supply chain design module, when we see it like, okay, in last 1 decade, the way the supply chain, how it has evolved. So as I said, as you blink your eyes, and you definitely miss something. That is how the whole supply chain network or supply chain in manufacturing as the organization has been evolved in during last 1 decade. The top key line factors are like the widespread use of the ERP system, the enterprise resource planning, as all of you might be knowing it. In last decade, we have various model of ERP has been implemented by various companies, whether it is SAP, whether it is Oracle, or any other ERP you take it as a name. Even the MSME sector has been now being all on the ERP system, where right for interlinking all the modules, whether it is like supply chain, whether it is a FICO, that is financial model, where it is a costing model, or it is a production planning model, and for the marketing is the sales and distribution. So when we are talking about the sales and distribution, the forecasting model till the implementation of your supply chain and the manufacturing model. So that how the growth is there. And we have seen the evolving of the emerging markets, okay, basically moving it from Malaysia, like Southeast Asia, if you talk about that, how the emerging market has evolved from not only from Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, and then the widespread has been there in the China factor, which we all know that everything has evolved in China as a one-centric market. And India is also nonetheless not that sort of there, but we are slowly moved, but we have also moved in a very fast way in last 1 decade. When you talk about the integration of technologies, then as the one of the ERP, and then various model of technologies has been evolved, that off the shelf working, and various technology has been integrated in the whole supply chain network, or it is the whole manufacturing network, as if you say. With that, we also have a risk management, which has become very important priority, as we have seen during the COVID. The risk management earlier, I think I'll be talking about in after some few slides, where talking about all the financial crisis in early 2000 and 2005 and 2009 coming to 2020. So how the risk management has become an important priority for every organization, that is important. And in last decade, it is one of the great things has happened, that supply chain management as a complete in the organization has arrived in the at the level of CXO level. That's what called as the C-suite. Whether it is like, okay, the lot of attention has been there from the management, because just to give example, for any manufacturing setup, around 50 to 80% of the working capital being employed in the getting a raw material or packing material. So that is where the whole thrust has been given by the top management on the supply chain management. That is how we are looking in the last 1 decade, how it has been transformed. If I'll say my own example, in the early 90s, there was never a person beyond a manager in a like, okay, materials manager or somebody. But now it is at like chief supply chain officer or vice president up to president level, people are there in the supply chain management, and they are in the decision makers. That is how the thing has been evolved in supply chain design model. So going to the next slide, when we talked about the complete design, like we see this complete model from left to right. If you see everywhere the inventory we talk about, right from the supplier plant till the finished goods inventory, right? Everywhere we're talking about the inventory. Inventory means the working capital block, means money is blocked. So we are talking about right from the first phase of getting the material, that is either it is in the direct to the plant or at the VMI model. VMI model is a vendor managed inventory. It is very popular terminology in the auto industry, where the cluster within the auto manufacturers, the clusters are being developed and they are supplying raw material or accessories on the VMI concept. And then your inbound transit and moving it from the raw material to work in progress, finished assembly. So every phases there is a inventory blockages. And when you talk about inventory blockages, means blockage of working capital. That is how quantitatively designed a supply chain model has to be there, that will support your targeted customer revenue. Because when you talk about organization income, it is only the revenue when we generate from the customer. That is how the whole parameter and risk level is associated with the inventory. So this is the background of all the supply chain design. Basically the scopes include inventory at all the nodes of supply chain, and that is very vital. And being in supply chain management, individual has to understand this basics very clearly. Moving into the next slide, when we talk about the supply chain flexibility, okay, so how supply chain flexibility can be upscaled in any in organizational view is basically based on the facts. Okay, quantitatively the supply chain that deliver the combinations, because the organization talks about the revenue, because because everything is being involved is to get a revenue for the organization, and where the flexibility comes into picture. And that's, as in the last slides we talk about inventory. So inventory turns means how quickly you complete your inventory from raw material to finished product and shipping it to the customer. That is how the inventory turns is called. And as you all know, that as the more will be the inventory turns, it will more of the working capital tied up in the your whole inventory. So that is where the every organization works upon that flexibility. And that definitely for that you need to have that working capital requirements, because your whole inventory norms is depend upon how the working capital tied up. And here I wanted to add one more thing. It is not only the working capital being tied up it only at the raw material at finished goods level, but also if finished goods being globally, if it has been holded at various places, various organizations, they have like supplying it to the various countries like in USA, Europe, and you are operating through the any model of warehousing. So till the it has been delivered to customer and you are getting the revenue, it is all your own inventory and your working capital is being tied up there. So that is how the whole risk level of whole excess inventory and optimized level of inventory, the flexibility has to be there. That's what we call it as a flexible supply chain, right? Moving into the next slide, I'll just briefly add it that, okay, how the fact-based predictive modeling and simulation can be done based on you have a various tools and tackles. Once tools is like, okay, you have suppliers, your current supplier, your new alternative supplier and distributors. And this terms has come very prominent during the COVID period, because for various raw materials, we were totally dependent on the China factor. Many other organizations, like in my last previous organization in the chemical, we were 80 to 80%, we are totally dependent on China supplies. And it has hit us so badly that, okay, we had to close our plant for various weeks and to the months. And same thing is happening in the electronic industry currently, because the capacities have not gone up and the demand in the electronic market has gone so high that industries are not able to fulfill. Even Apple and those big, so Dell, the big sorts people, they're also suffering a lot. So how is the suppliers positioning, how your supplier options available with you, and the manufacturing model, okay, how you are building your forecast, ordering, and the Kanban is like, okay, covering your whole supply, how whole inventory model within the manufacturing. So that is how you have to maximize your customers margin through optimizing stock outs, right? Because stock outs is one of the killing for any organization, and that can be tracked various with the KPIs like key performance indicator and statistical tools, which will be giving an indication. Like some of them I have just pointed out, like how is your revenue plan. In your revenue model, you have depending upon like various business units, like, okay, you're not focusing on one customer, you have a different customer base. So how the psychological of the demand pattern of the particular customer, so the how your whole revenue plan is there, how your whole days in inventory and an obsolete liability is there with you. Okay, basically this is very prominent in the electronic industry. And how complete, as we discussed more about the working capital earlier. So this is all about how the tools and tackle, and with the keeping a mind of KPI and SPC, how you're designing your complete model on the supply chain. That is how you can advance your working capitals. Next slide, please. So in this, then we'll talk about the process optimization. Basically, like how the forecast errors, because one of the key factors in any organization is a forecasting. Forecasting comes from the, like, okay, whether you are a near time forecasting, whether you are a long term forecasting, or you have a long term 3-year, 5-year plan forecast is available. So when organization talks about the forecast error, so as you all must be knowing it, and the forecast accuracy throughout the globe standard is around 50 to 60%. So you can imagine there is error of 40 to 50% in the forecast. So because the customer demand has been generated, but there is a lot of inaccuracy, because lot of demand has been changing, the reason why it changes. So that is always be a very I'll take it for supply chain managers or supply chain network people, it will be very abruptly things, because how you plan it, because your so much of forecast error is there. So as your forecasting error is low, your revenue margins are always be high, because you are trying it to plan your complete process optimization depending upon your forecast accuracy, because your complete days in inventory, that is very sensitive, because your capital, your whole working capital is tied up, and again you are on work, inventory model, you are paying around 17 to 20% on the interest part of it. So that is a big chunk is always be blocked. So how you can build your MRP, that materials requirement planning, based on current forecasting system. So there are a lot of factors are there, how you can adjust your bills of material. You can rerun the forecast as per the weekly forecast or monthly forecast, or you can develop your KPIs, that how is the products getting linked into assembly and sub-assembly level. So that is how the corrections are there, and process optimization is very vital for choosing the supply chain optimizations. Next slide, please. So we'll touch base about the capabilities now on the supply chain. So basically the whole thing, it starts from the customer requirement. As we say, that everything is to be fulfillment for the customer, whether it is revenue, flex. So you have a revenue, then flexibility and risk. So these are the three factors which has to be considered before you design your complete supply chain whole design tool. And parallelly, you have to run the manufacturing model selection, like as we discussed about the MRP, that materials requirement planning. So materials requirement planning not only sees about the customer demand, but it also looks after the capacity available at the plant level. So that is to leveraging all the components of multiple products, and plus the safety stocks calculation. Safety stock calculation not only for your inventory for the raw material, but also for your finished goods. And your then material sourcing option can evolve on the basis of all this module, because as you know, for any requirement or any organization to run the plant, there should be either capacity should be available, or they should have the availability of the orders. Otherwise there's no point of running the plant. So the both thing has to match. The plant capacity will be matched depending upon the what is the capital outlay has been there for the plant, and another factor is the how the your forecast is there. So your complete grouping of your product and individual product level has to be mapped it to, so that your whole sourcing, like within supply chain management, your whole sourcing aspect has to be evolved in that. And as we discussed, your actionable data to structure the whole supply chain performance on that level. So to summarize these capabilities, as we in the bottom, as I've just given one liner, that quantitative actionable fact based data to support supply chain design and supply chain management and customer engagement. So these are the basic need to have the capabilities around the supply chain management. Moving into the whole supply chain design part, okay, how your supply chain model can be designed is input requirement to the outputs. Okay, so here is the inputs. When you talk about what is your service level has to be delivered. Okay, whenever the service level, whenever we talk about plus 99%. Okay, because nothing in the supply chain things we talk less than 99, or even we talk about 100%. So there is not a single gap. So the second thing is the forecast accuracy. That is the very biggest challenges what we face for the forecast accuracy. And for the forecast accuracy, now the various tools has been come in there within the ERP, like you have a Salesforce.com, and various model has come up which predict your, as per the depending upon the last lift up, manufacturing setup of the customer. So all the database has been evolved during the last I think 5 to 7 years. And how you can build your forecast ratio is also important. Okay, and looking into the inputs are like, okay, how you can fix your minimum order quantity, your Kanban, your manufacturing cycle time. The one of the key factor is the alternative supplier. When we, because this is very vitally we have learned during the COVID that as we had aggressively gone in last one decade looking into only one supplier, okay, or critical supplier, if you suppose we take it like a China or other places. But now the concentration has been shifted, and we are talking about definitely the alternate supplier and the local supplier. So that concept has come up, and definitely this is the very prominent thing as an input. And the key factor is the lead time. Okay, how quickly you can turn around the inventory ratio, as we discussed in the some slide before. And the output, it gives it like your days of inventory in the at that your premature level of raw material, or it is like okay at the FG level. And as we seen in the some in the previous slides, okay, every stage of inventory holding is a working capital tied up. So how your inbound transit, your raw material, WIP, or work in progress, or till the finished goods, how the whole inventory is working, and how your inventory working capital tied up is basically the key factor. Excess and obsolescence is very critical as far as the electronic industries is concerned, where they talk about around 1 to 2% obsolete and excess, because they always tie up or they procure the material looking into the advancement because of the inaccuracy in the forecast, and that is where the whole profit optimization comes in the picture. So as you must be knowing it, reading articles or somewhere, that electronic industry, they work on a very thin margin. I'm not talking about Apple, Dell. I'm talking about the people who are manufacturing it. So all the manufacturers across the globe in the electronic industry, they work on the margin of around 5 to 10%. Whereas in the chemical sector, they talk about 30 to 40%. Right. So this is how the profit optimization is there for the different industry in a different way. Moving now into the next topic is basically the how your supply chain design tool and quantify, and how you can prioritize the things is basically you have to gather the lot of customer data, okay, that how the customer behavior is there on the form, not only from the forecast accuracy, but point of view that okay, how the orders are being floating. Once you analyze the current performance of product at customer level, then you can rerun your whole supply chain model at the product level, and you can simulate the complete sensitivity analysis, okay, which drives your supply chain solutions in a different way, because here we are talking about the inventory and plus the collaborating your whole solutions based on that. So that is how you can implement with the suppliers once you have all the data or the information available with you. So that is how it is just a snapshot. I've given some example of it, that okay, how the modeling or you can design tool is being working for a various industry. I've given one of the model of this in the electronic industry, how we used to do it for prioritizing the whole network design. Okay. Moving into the next slide is we'll be talking about more on the inventory summary report. So as I was referring it to the inventory is a key factor for any working capital hold up. So week on week basis, in the left chart you can see on the first week, second week, third week, and fourth week, every month week wise how the forecast accuracy is moving. Like you see here, it has been shown like 46%, 45%, 50%, 45%, like this. And then how your total cash cycle is moving it, like in the right extreme right at the top, you can see the forecast accuracy. It is floating around 40 to 50%, right? And then whole model of your input output ratio is depend upon how the whole your working capital tied up in this scenario. So it is just a replica that okay, what we are discussing in the earlier slides. So next slide, please. Here also, I'll be not talking much of it. It is just a what if analysis. We used to make it on the supply chain design model, where we talk about if at all scenario one, in the current scenario, if you move inventory, if you move it slightly better at the 70% level, like okay, the 50% accuracy to 70% to 100%, how the inventory and working capital will work. So we have to simulate. We used to simulate this thing, and we have to always used to go back and ask the customer, or you have to suggest to the customer if that you have to increase your bandwidth, then this can be possible. Okay, so this is how even at the level of around 200% or 250% turnaround, these things we used to simulate and give it back to the marketing team to go back and talk to the customer and at least come back, and if that can be possible or we can do something on that. Because in this situation, it is not only we can win it, but also as a customer, at least they can leverage something. We can always have to pass on some cost to them. Okay, this is always a win-win situation. So in a nutshell, of all the supply chain design and management tools is basically that, okay, how you as a complete supply chain network optimization a particular site or organization is adopting it. Okay, and based on the whole flexibility situation and your execution performance, that is how the whole blocks is been there, just to give you a flavor of it, what I was talking about in previous half an hour time, that how you can move it your supply chain design to a management tool set. Okay, because ultimately you are, as a supply chain leader or supply chain team member, responsible for 60 to 80% of the company's working capital. So on that basis, how you will justify, not only justify, how you can take it forward, organization from one level to the next level, designing your complete supply chain on this revenue flexibility and supply chain cost model. So this is what is how the supply chain is playing a role on it. Going one step ahead, that okay, how the sales and operation process schematics will work, like what we discussed about forecast inaccuracy 50 to 60%. So how you can leverage that one, how you can enhance the forecast accuracy. So there are various approaches to it. One approach is sales and operation planning process, and in this there are various like top-down approach and bottoms up forecasting models are there. Okay, in the top-down forecasting approach, where you have your from customer side, you have a revenue forecast, because and then we have a margin objectives from the on the either it is on the BU level, the business unit level, or at the customer level, and definitely it will work on the profit forecast. Definitely, because when the forecast is able to change it, then they have to see that okay, what are the other leverage they are going to have, whether they are to have to keep this inventory level up, then what the cost they have to employ it. And this is basically gives us the top-down forecasting, where at least in the schematic way, the organization will able to see it, whether they can see the objectives at least not only for near future, the 3 month or 6 months, at least they can see it for a year. Okay, and this is it is possible for some of the industry, it is not possible for many of the industry, like in the chemical field, or like where it is going to a consumer products. So on the linear basis, then it is possible, but in the electronic industry, where the things are been changing every day and night, there it will be very difficult to do the top down forecasting, where it can be supported by the bottoms of forecasting, where your sales history suggests, gives certain indicator, your all the statistical forecast of the last couple of year, or at least 6 months or 9 months, gives at least the bottoms of information, that how you can enhance your complete database, and plus also your actual sales data that is happening at like month on month basis. And here also it is important to build up a supply capacity, because the latest example, like sorry, in the electronic industry, uh, as you know, because of the huge demand of electronics worldwide, because of the COVID, post COVID, because of requirement, you say laptops and all these electronic gadgets, the supply things were never forecasted in that way, and a lot of disruption has happened, though, because increase in the production capacity, or like okay, for a manufacturer of the key parts, takes around 1.5 to 2 years. By the time your requirement has gone so suddenly, that even biggest to biggest industry is getting hit off their manufacturings, because they're not able to get the source the parts. So that is how your supply capacity also is important to enhance the complete sales and operating planning process. And it has to bring down to one, that's what we call as a one number plan, where you have like the coordination from all the places, and then you can at least go and at least you do the sales and operation plan, and then there are feedbacks here and there, and then you can able to execute, synchronizing the whole sales and operation plan. So this is how about the whole SNOP model. Now this till this point we have covered all about the supply chain model, the efficiency level, and how the standard way of operating in a pre-COVID era. Now comes the actual things that how you will be able to accentuating the weak links like, okay, the COVID has come, and that has given a lot of learning to every this thing, and all across the globe the whole supply chain disruption has happened. Okay, and it is basically, if you see in the right side top, it is like a GDP growth, the things are there being depicted, where you can see the first dip has happened in somewhere in 97 98, when the emerging market, like there is a crisis happened in Thailand and Singapore. The currency crisis happened there because a lot of your financial companies have gone bankrupt, and that crisis has happened in 97 98. So first dip on the GDP worldwide has come to that, but the supply chain network and supply chain process not that way not got affected at that moment of time also. Even at like, okay, dot-com crisis of 2000 to 2K crisis or dot-com crisis, what we say it, and then post one is 9/11, what has happened in USA, dip has come, but again it has not disrupted as far as the capacity of supply chain network is concerned, because it is like a financial crisis. Though it was affected to every organization, but I am talking about at the top level supply chain network optimization. Then you have again a financial crisis happened in 2009-10, which we have seen it, and then we come out of it immediately in the within a year, and then the crisis of 2020, the COVID crisis has come. The COVID crisis has come in a very big way, which was nowhere in the world. Nobody has projected it, and it has disrupted everybody's life. It has been like many of the industry, like first started in 2009, December, January, when we have seen the plant supply from China and Southeast Asia got affected. People were having a month or 2 months of inventory. They were able to digest it, but by the time February came and March 2020, it was widespread across the nation. Even if you see in India, in 2020 March, 22nd of March, the whole lockdown started throughout the country. So, and it has disrupted a very big way, not only the individual's life, but also it disrupted a whole way in complete network. Okay. It was like, okay, whole supply chain, I feel whether it is like import, export, everything has got abrupted. And the absence of, like, okay, when you talk about the China factor, then Chinese products have already led to the temporary, like automotive sector has been impacted in Japan and Korea. So a lot of cases are there. So whole supply chain network has got affected on that. And then in the second graph, if you see it, how the COVID and post, like, okay, the dip is there, whereas the exports from China, if you see, it has again reached to the around close to 200 billion mark, but there's a large gap. Why it is so? Because like as I said in some of the slides earlier, that we had started looking into alternative supplies beyond China. So like many of the countries, they have seen it, India as an alternative. Many countries like Japan, they have withdrawn the capacity from China, and the other emerging countries like Malaysia, which is already it was there, Taiwan, Vietnam, then you have Indonesia. This country has been becoming so emerging country from the Southeast Asia factor, because these are the countries where you have to get the product because of not only you have a cheap market available, but you have a labor, all the other factors are there, capacities are there, production. So those thing factor has been there. Moving to the next slide, again continuing with this topic on the pandemic, the whole global production network historically being considered as a resource availability. We have seen as a global network as a one, and we have seen from the angle of resource availability, customer proximity, cost arbitrage, or combination of these factors. We've never seen that how the pandemic will be there and how supply chain or whole network has to be estimated. Everybody has seen it that okay, how the resources available, whether the production capacities are there or not, and how cheap we are getting the product. That is what the supply chain network people is to think it. Next to mass, other factor like geopolitical things we used to see it, any geographical distances, social culture, how it can influence the economic decisions. Those things we used to see, but not that much effect. But a high degree of concentration of manufacturing capability within a certain country were natural outcome of these trends. And that is how, if you see that okay, the dependency on China, we used to call it China as a world's factory to keep the global economy moving, because you can imagine 250 billion of exports, right, from the China itself. Then how the economy is being run, and China is the second economy after USA. Okay, so how they are biggest in that, and how they are playing it. And either KPMG has done a survey at the end of the last year 2020, and they talk about 67% of global CEOs and around 64% of Indian CEOs. They have cited that okay, we have to reinvent the supply chain as a result of epidemic, and that has come alive. Every organization has started looking into it differently as far as the considering as this epidemic as a learning point of curve, and that is how the whole evaluation has happened across the industry and across the globe, if I'll say it. Moving to the next slide is basically it is sorry, how the China, just to touch a base, that how China is still the important factor for supply chain. Okay, because there's a legacy advantage to them because of the business policies. They have a best of the best class, the infrastructure available, abundant availability of the skilled labor, still it is there, and they have a whole ecosystem of technological things has been there, and they are almost 18% of the world GDP growth enabled by the China factors. And even though the IMF say that even though after the catastrophic, the rapid comeback within China, because I'm not talking about the geopolitical things, but how they came back is also a phenomenal thing, which been IMF data shows that okay, how they rebound right from going a dip to again going back to the normalcy they're talking about. But here the topic is how the emerging markets set to a pivotal role now. The countries like Malaysia, Vietnam, India, Bangladesh, Philippines, because if you see the data, when you're talking about like India in growth, we're talking about 6 to 6.5% of GDP growth. And the post-pandemic, when you're talking about the regional supply chain flows and logistic network are being re-examined and the risks are being reassociated. One of the example I quoted here, during post-COVID, the whole logistics network has got so much of disruption that right from China to US or China to India, if I say, the logistic cost has gone 4 times more than what it was there in 2020 or 2019. So that disruptions has happened because of the various phenomenon of the either shipping industry, or it is a misbalance of the whole calculation of the economic things, that how the growth and how the movement will happen between the countries. And that has given a thought process of every industry, that how to look into your supply chain model, coming into sourcing of your raw material, sourcing of your any product from these countries. So there are a lot of regional phenomenon has come up, that okay, you need to source it locally, and that is where the countries, all this country which I named, Vietnam, Malaysia or India, this has evolving. And if you see the FDI, the foreign direct investment growth is phenomenal in this countries in last 1 year. India is a country, you have to see that 50 billion inflow is there in FDI in the last year itself. So that is how we're talking about that, how the regional growth is happening in the whole supply chain network. Moving into the next slide, we'll be talking more on the this how this thing is evolving. Okay, how the thing has been moving from mobilizing it, that okay, how your plan of supply chain, if you're really looking into from the supply chain angle, that how your whole operating rules and process of your whole intervention, how your contingencies happened, how you can mobilize this thing to sense it. Okay, and you can prioritize your risk and how you can new implications or your supply chain components can be done it. Okay, and once you sense it, then how you need, definitely you need to analyze it. Okay, how, what different protocols, okay, right from the source, plan, make, where to source it, from which country to source it, what are the geopolitical situation, because post COVID scenario has given a different angle to a supply chain manager to look into it, because it has been now 360-degree link. Earlier used to see the labor cost and those capacities and some part of economical thing, but now is a complete 360-degree views. We need to analyze it, and then you need to configure, or people are configuring the whole tailor-made solutions or tailor-made supplies for your complete your supply chain network. So that is how the post-COVID supply chain assessment is being happening. I'm not saying it is 100% being implemented, but organizations are looking into it to how they can at least sense it and utilize this as the 100% factors. Now moving into the whole opportunities and how the advantages is being there. Okay, on the next slide we'll look into it, that okay, how the opportunities and advantage as such being there. So as one of the survey which I've quoted at the bottom of the screen, you can see it, about 70% of the survey respondents they were mentioned that okay, they want to either resort or planning to resort the near future from the other countries, because they were not sure from where to get this material, because nobody has looked into out of China or from a single supplier. So the multi-supplier thing, when it comes, now people are talking about the 70% of the world supply chain heads survey which was done. They were talking about they want to reshore, or they want to reapply the whole vulnerability of the whole supply chain network. So that is how people are looking into the market very differently. We have to see the all the hidden risk. Okay, the risk which was not that is such popular, or it was not been or been neglected, being looked after, now being a hidden risk to very minutely, and to the result of it, that okay, how you can diversify your supply base. That is important, because we have to run your organization or the company in the continuous base, and you cannot have any stoppages of the production. That is the like we as a supply chain managers or supply chain team, it is in our blood. We have to accentuate that okay, there should not be any stoppages of any factory at any whatever the reason may be. So that is how people are now talking about how you can rethink about the inventory or safety stocks, because earlier we were talking about vendor managed inventory, we're talking about just in time inventory. Now we are looking into that how the safety stock and inventory has to be relook into it, so that my stoppages are not there. And for that, a lot of process innovations are happening. People are doing like a lot of automations, end-to-end automations are being looked into it, like which was like 20 to 30% of automation process pre-COVID. Now we are talking about 55 to 60% of automation. So 100% automation will take a lot of time. Even we are 20 years ahead, yeah, we'll be able to do it, but not now. So we're talking about graduating from 25% of automation to 50 to 60% of automation, and that too with like new process technologies to evolving through, giving all the hidden risks and addressing all the factors, so that we can continuously, our flow of manufacturing has to be there, and we can take advantage. Additive manufacturing, we have to take advantage of our manufacturing to the competition, because we are there with some competition, not if not in India, in some other country. So how to address those things? So that is very important. Moving into the next slide is continue with this topic of opportunity in the competitive advantage. I've just listed how the electronic industry is targeting or looking into it. As I said, electronics industry is the biggest hit in the post-COVID time, and still there is no clear path that how it will going to take advantage. Everybody is working in the war basis. Even the best of the best industry like Dell or Apple or Flextronics or whosoever you call it, so they are really holding it to very steady progress, and they're talking about 1.7 trillion economy or development in next this year or by next year. The aerospace and defense industry actually has gone up a little bit ahead of this curve, and little bit of drop of around 5% is being seen, but they are able to come back very fast in that. Automotive industry in some of the some of the area like in emerging markets and Southeast Asia, the growth is there, but it got a very biggest hit in European market. US market is doing somehow it's good, and in India we have seen a lot of ups and down in the like, okay, Diwali Dasara last year it has done well, again dip, and again it is trying to come up, but there are a lot of automotive industry are facing a hit because of this electronic issues, because a lot of parts of electronics they are not getting it because of the disruption in the electronics market. So that is where the disruption has come into the whole supply chain network in the automotive industry. Retail is one of the area which is not only I'm talking about the bricks and mortar, but I'm talking about the e-commerce industry that has evolved during the last 2-3 years in a very big way, and they have done a fairly well. And for the supply chain managers and for the people who are working in supply chain, it is a tough time for them managing the whole supply chain network. So that is just a brief about the sectoral things, how they are rebounding on this demand issues. Going next is, in the next slide we'll be talking about again on the opportunity as far the India is concerned. So we're talking just now, we discussed about the global thing. So the opportunity in India is, if you see in the graph, I think whether you are able to see it, but if you highlight the India part, it is like, okay, FDI, if you see around 60% of 60 billion approximately the FDI has happened last year, and we're talking about GDP growth of around 7%, and we are the fifth largest GDP economy, and we're talking about reaching right from 2.47 trillion to 5 trillion in next 4-5 years, obviously. And the biggest advantage for us is like in IoT and big data, we have a lot of patents being filed, a lot of advancement is happening in the supply in the IT networks, if I say. And in the recent years, in last 2-3 years, because of various other decisions like implementation of your lower corporate tax as far as this multi-organization is concerned, then you have an implementation of GST and e-bill, which has reduced the logistics cost. As you must be knowing it, India's logistics cost is close to around 13 to 14% of GDP, where the world standard is around 7% to 8%. And we are able to bring it within 13 to 14%, around 15%, means around 1% of overall has come down in last 1 year, 1.5 years, because of the implementation of GST and e-bill, because the road infrastructure, how it has been evolved in last couple of years. So that has given India replacement opportunity in the very fast way. Even if I see the chemical industry, it has growth has been very phenomenal, and the R&D setup are evolving in last couple of years. And as per the supply chain, these are the basic things which is required for any supply chain, right from the buyer or from a strategic analyst to a head of a department, to at least boost up that, okay, I'll be able to do something for my organization. And this is how I listed these things, because these are the base things which is required for any economy to support for any supply chain managers. Continuing about the opportunity in as for the India replenishment is that if you see it, that how the we are completely, if you see it, how you are complete road network and complete network as a like civil aviation sectors, how the growth story is happening, how the like, okay, as per the benchmark the world standard, there is still way ahead to go, but there are a lot of things, if you see from we are way ahead to go, but there are a lot of growth is being there. We have a young generation of people who are at least coming into the industry and looking into it. And my whole talk is today to motivate all of you, all the students who are hearing to me, that to motivate to you that, okay, supply chain management is a field which is very focused area, and it's going to be there in next 20, 30 and 50 years, take it my word. And that is how I'm at least selling supply chain management in across my last 5-10 years whenever I go for a discussion in at least academic forums. So that is how the India growth story is being there. Moving into the next slide is basically we talk about uh, the complete digitization, as we were talking about that how digitization is evaluating when we talk about what is the way forward. Okay, so if you in the McKinsey report, if you see in the pictorial thing, the whole the IT things has gone up from like 20% to almost 50% on the digitization changes in last 1.5 years, and it is a big changes. People were thinking about doing all this automation changes, digitization, but it was taking a toll because it is a capital cost involved. And no, in industry where all they were evaluating their own self, because there are a lot of gaps are there in the way the technology has to be evolved and technology has to be implemented, because people are talking about blockchain, some talking about AI, artificial intelligence, ML, then a lot of things are there, but how, what is the suitable things for any organization? That is a problematic things. And even like me as a heading of one of the supply chain department, it was very tough time that how to at least decide upon which part has to be digitized, whether it is like a procurement to pay model or order to cash model or end to end, because blockchain talks about end to end. And there are a lot of secrecy in the organization, a lot of things are there, whether we can reveal everything, whether our data will be secure enough, whether the cloud data will be secured enough when we're talking about end-to-end digitization. But nonetheless, in last 1.5 year, this thing has evolved a lot in the whole industry. I'm industry or all across. So big data analytics, what in big data analytics, at least we have seen changes, because it has revolved to the working from home culture. Like when even in the manufacturing setup also, people started working from home. So unless and until we have a data, how we can at least going to take a decisions on that. So, and how we'll manage your supply base, how you can make the relationship with the logistic partners. So whole network and shipping processes is totally enhanced with the automation and internet of things. And that has evolved a lot of way, and people are trying to it. That's why you can see the McKinsey report data. It has graph has increased from 20% to 55% of increase in the digitization process. And digital adoption has taken a definitely a quantum leap for both the organization level and the industry level, whether it is like a MSME sector or mid sector or the large sector. And that has given a very advantageous things to the supply chain people, which is like if you see in this slide, around 76% of the equipment staff with having a whole the technology has given. And the top 10 thing where the technology, if I'm talking about a supply chain point of view, then like okay, barcoding, scanning within the warehouses, your automation like in the computers, network, like your analytic things in the big data, your complete warehouse with the RFID tags, like okay, whole mobile tracking system, and like whole phenomenon has evolved a lot of way in the last 1.5 years. And your managing your supply chain risk and disruption with this is to try to understand the whole demand impact on the complete business. And you need to see how your short-term demand supply synchronization strategy is happening. And that is where the digitization has supported a lot. Your potential channel shift, okay, how your any changes is happening in near time future, that can be channelized. Your you can alternative inbound logistic or outbound logistics can be option can be evaluated, because a lot of disruption, as I said, is happened in the logistics sector in last 1.5 year. So that is without the data, it was very impossible thing people to take a decision as all across the industry. Then how to mitigate this risk? That is how thing has been changes. And you have to rebound the complete process, because manufacturing doesn't sit idle, because you have to rebound very fast. Timing is so fast that you need to rebound, and things has to be there. Like we call it like in a supply chain or manufacturing setup, everything required yesterday, not today. So how the whole scenario has been evolved in a complete supply chain disruption, and how people have evolved and contributed, and this is how it has been done there. Moving into the next slide is So I think this will be the I think it will be the last slide where we'll be talking about the looking ahead. Decades long focus on the supply chain optimization is basically what we were looking into earlier is, as a supply chain team, is to reduce cost and inventories. You might have seen that how I was talking about the inventory right from the first level to last level, and the focus was on inventory, and everything was to drive up the asset utilization. Okay, and there was no buffer and flexibility to absorb any disruption like COVID, what has happened, because we were talking about Lean Six Sigma, we're talking about just-in-time inventory, and we never aware that this vulnerability in the supply chain and this global shocks will come. So that is where the whole thought process has gone up now to relook into it, the cost factor, relook into it at the inventory level, and the whole asset utilization, how it is going to have. And this will be like, okay, you need to leverage, and people are leveraging advanced technology such as like, okay, IoTs, 5G network, digital supply networks. We're talking about um, to anticipate any future challenges. Okay, we don't know how the future will look like, but at least whatever the learning curve we had with the COVID, so that is how the technological things we, at least in the supply chain team, we are talking about. And whether it will be like a black swan, what we call it is like a COVID-19, or like we have seen trade war in recently in 2018 between US, China, or even sudden spikes of demand. Okay, like what we have seen in electronic industry, depending upon the post-COVID era. So these are things which is basically organization is looking after that. Okay, how the whole supply chain network has to address. Okay, so this is what about the complete presentations for today. I have some places I've run through little fast. I request then professor to at least to share with the students if they will be, and if you all have any questions right now, you can ask the questions. If at all anything is there which you have, it has kicked it to you.
It was really a wonderful session, sir. So Professor Gurnani will be taking up the questions. I have got a question, if you allow me, Professor Gurnani, to ask first.
Yes, sir. Sure.
Yeah. So the thing is that, sir, I have been a student of computer science and engineering, and as usual, a lifelong student of computer science and engineering now.
Right.
So I have seen in some previous presentations also, and today's presentation also, that supply chain, I get to believe from your slides that data analytics is going to play a big role as far as this supply chain is concerned. So I want some of your comments,
Correct.
if you can kindly give that how much role is data analytics going to play in supply chain. And my second question in relevance to this is, if it is really going to play a good role or a big role in supply chain, then how much important it is for computer science engineers to take up management topics parallelly as a part of their choice-based credit system. So these are the two questions for you, sir. If you can kindly take it up.
So as far as the what we have seen in the last 2 years, precisely, if you talk about the way the whole industry or complete change happened in right from looking into the forecast model to the whole distribution model, is like everything is the based on the data. Like when we talk about the forecast accuracy of 50 to 60%, so how to enhance the forecast accuracy? One thing is that to get the data. Second thing, that okay, how you can analyze the data on that, the various factors, like okay, you have to algorithm, you have to do it like various things, as we had talked about the bottoms up and top up approaches. So those things have to be realigned with the data analytics, which definitely give a growth potential to, like okay, the supply chain management, like a leader or a team member nowadays, nothing like okay, you will be just like a procurement guy, or you are or a logistics person, or you are a warehouse person. You have to be a scientifically thinking about whole data, how you have to analyze the things, and you have to really bring into culture of implementation. And that is where the risk of like okay, industry I'm talking about if I think your question was that, okay, how much percentage of thing has to be there in the data analytics play a role in the supply chain thing. So if I'll say around more, at least 30 to 40%, what I believe is the fact on a database things, right? And then there is the analytical part, and then there is a decision part. So I feel has to be 30 to 40% data driven thing has to be there in the whole chronology. And if you will not believe it, in my own last two organizations, in last organization itself, we have seen a lot of the experts coming it from like a background of like from the computer science or computer engineering, or from the background of it coming into supply chain team to help us to evolve this whole situation, because we had or we had a logic, but we are not knowing how to link it. Like you remember, I think our age, we can remember the 2000 2K phenomenon happened in 2000, right? The whole we thought, okay, every world is going to collapse.
Right.
How the thing has been, how people like Infosys and TCS and those HCL people, how they worked behind it, and they were able to manage it, and nothing has happened worldwide, right? The same way, the same thing is there in today's phenomenon. How we can, this thing of COVID thing can be avoided in future with this data driven thing. And I am firm believer of it, and we have seen it.
Right. So Gunani, you may kindly go ahead with it now.
So I'll take up the questions that have been put by the students.
Yeah.
The first question is, sir, can you please elaborate supply chain flexibility with an example?
So the supply chain flexibility, if you see that, okay, how the supply chain you're talking about from light, if I'll give an example, you're currently using a product, say suppose any X product, you are sourcing it globally from one source, because you are giving a large quantum of your whole things to the particular supplier is a one supplier, and you are taking leverage of the cost and discounts factor. Okay, but in the post-COVID scenario, what has happened, that one source, if it is going to be abrupted with any supply chain restrictions, then you are going to stuck up, your whole production is going to stuck up. So you have to relook into the alternate supplier, and maybe that will be some cost affair. So we have to link it to it like flexibility. I'm talking about like a revenue base. Okay, if you're talking about your revenue with the profitability of 20 to 25%, here maybe you have to subsidize your profit level, maybe 15%, but you can continue your production level and your whole thing will be continuing rather than the disruption in the plant. So whole flexibility is in those terms.
Yes, that
hope I'll able to give an example of it. Yeah.
Yes. The second question is like, how can we plan to have a accurate forecasting? Like, what could be the reliable methods for having more of accurate forecasting?
So see, there are a lot of models are being currently being working. I think I've given one of the example of SNOP model, that sales and operation planning model. There are model of like a SCORE, people are using it. Then there are model of CPR, collaborative planning and forecasting review technique. Model called. So those are the techniques that people are using in a various. So those are the techniques that people are using in this industry. So in my these things, when I'm talking about a varied industry like chemicals or electronics, or maybe in the engineering companies, we are more or less you're using an SNOP model and a SCORE model, where your whole thing is depend upon plan, make, source, and availability. Okay, everything. How your planning is there, what is the capacity you have, and what is the advantage of your complete setup of customer requirement, you can handle it. So on that basis, whether you can do this your MT or MTS model, there is one model called is like make to order and make to stock. So whether you can do, like I'll give an example like how we used to do in the telecom sector, in my telecom manufacturing, which was happening in Jaipur that time. That used to, because there was a lot of demand was there in 3G and 4G in that period, and 4G was not evolved that time, 3G was in the peak. So how to change that your requirement, because there was no forecast coming in at how clarity of the 3G or 4G. So what we should do it, we used to make the stock on the MTS things, like make to stock at certain level of product, which is going into both the model of 4G and 3G network. And then as the orders kicked up, you can transform from MTS to the MTO order for 4G and 3G. So like you have a capacity utilizing it for up to MTS level at least level of 60% of the capacities. And then you can convert into the MTO when the order comes, whether it is for the 3G model or 4G model. The flexibility, you can use it in your whole production capacity level. Production, right?
So I'll move on to the next question. That is like, apart from quality of raw material and costing, what other factors determine the selection of vendors or suppliers for a company?
Apart from the quality of raw material and
Apart from the quality of raw material and the costing part, what other factors determine the selection of vendors, suppliers for a company?
so other factor, I think, which is very predominantly has started in current scenarios is basically you have how your lead time plays a role, very vital role, lead times. Okay, whether it is if you are importing a product from like various countries, and what is the lead time, how your complete logistics and logistic network is working on that. So as I gave example from China, your lead time in last 1 year has gone up from 3 to 4 weeks, and your cost of logistics has gone up 4x. So these are the other factor which is really making a sense to, apart from your quality of raw material and your cost factor, your logistics network and your lead time. These are the factor which has given thinking to the supply chain managers or the buyers to relook into it, a complete regional sourcing, what I was talking about, how you can evolve your regional and local network of your supplies.
That how are optimized inventory levels calculated? Please elaborate.
See, optimized inventory levels is where there are various techniques is being worked on that, because when you're talking about optimization of inventory, you have different, like you have to how you are calculating your economical order quantity, how you are evolving your safety stock, reorder level. Then you have coming into the economic order quantity and the maximum stock level. So these are the basic things which in a standard way we calculate on the calculating your economical order quantity when we are going for an order. Now when you talk about the optimized inventory at this scenarios, which is now unpredictable things, then like safety stock, which is basically your lead time consumptions and abrupt up in any situation. So those are very important, that how to address those things, and then on that assumption based, how your calculation going into calculating your complete quantity that you need to order on level. That is the current sync order on the optimized level. Current scenario, how we are doing in the industry.
So the next question is like, what are the career prospects in supply chain management? The same thing which sir was asking. Career prospects in supply chain management from engineering management students' point of view.
So I think this is a very good question. It is there for a student to know it, because just talking about the subject will not fulfill their objectives of this thing talk. And what I see it that the growth is phenomenal as in a supply chain management. Okay, and supply chain management is a very vast in a vast field itself. You have multiple layer factors within supply chain management. That is, one is like, okay, strategic and tactical sourcing, that is procurement, what we call it. The second is the international and domestic logistics part, and third pillar is like, okay, your production planning and control department. Then you have logistics is one of the part. Then you have customer relationship management, that how you can fulfilling the order to cash. And then within the logistics nowadays, because the statutory requirements and statutory controls are very particular things. So there are 5-6 verticals within supply chain management is there. So for an engineering background people, what I've seen it and wow, we at least people how to take their career growth is basically they can take it either into the strategic and practical sourcing part, and then production planning and control. The two vertical which is very predominant, which is there for as a it because a lot of data is driven and it is like okay, and it is very close to the operations, and that is where these engineering people can make a career growth of it. But the suggestion will be that okay, after doing your engineering course, you need to do some specialization in supply chain management, either some degree or diploma, which will at least give a edge to you to take care of your career growth in that. Or you can continue as a GD in that field, and then parallelly you can do some diploma or degree in supply chain management or in logistics, this thing. That is how the growth is there. And as far as the career growth is there, I'll tell you from the example of mine that okay, I am a non-engineering graduate, and during that day, those days when I started my career, only engineers were there who were coming into the supply on the sourcing or buying field, and rest of the people are going either in the warehouse in the logistics. Okay, and there was not an integrated department, but it has evolved in last 20-30 years, and I'll tell you it is one of the key factor and very strategic role people we are going as a role of like chief supply chain officer at CXO levels, president level, vice president level, and name it. So that is where I can see the growth of the people, right? And it is very strategic position. You can imagine 60 to 80% of the company organization money is in your hand. Then how the importance should not be there? It is there. So it is very important for a role to play within the organization.
Yes, sir, that's very well answered. And we have one more question, like what could be the good steps to be taken by Indian governance to grab supplier opportunities post COVID, which are actually lost by China?
So the thing is, one of the prominent things which is happening nowadays, like just yesterday, government of India has given some leverage to the steel industry. Earlier, they had given it to other industry also. So, but the fact is here, the Chinese government is giving almost close to 9 to 10% export incentive to their all the manufacturer for exporting the goods, which is not available to Indian industry. We are getting around 2 to 3% of various schemes that has been withdrawn because of the pressure of United States of America, USA. But government is coming up with the leveraging this thing with the various other schemes which has still not been implemented, not been announced. So because the Indian manufacturers are not being has to compete in the world market with this other countries like China and others. And one part is definitely that okay, how you can optimize your production cost. That is very important. I'm not talking about okay, you just eliminate people, manpower, and that you will do no, nothing like that. You need to optimize your cost efficiency due to the efficiency factor. Like you have to implement a lot of Six Sigma projects, a lot of Lean Six Sigma things through which you can capitalize the production cost. Plus, yes, the right question is that okay, the government has definitely is coming up like various scheme like MEIS scheme called merchandise export incentive scheme, software incentive schemes. So those are still to be announced. I think within a month or two it will be again announced. So we'll be leveraging those things against the China model, where they are getting 9 to 10% of advantage, where at least we should get around 4 to 5% of it. So that is where I think Indian industry can compete with the world other industry across the globe.
I think so, sir. We are done with the questions. There is one more question which looks a bit incomplete. Like, why do manufacturers struggle with capacity planning? Asked by Tinku Yadav. So, sir, can we unmute Tinku Yadav to ask this question? Actually, I think so. The question is not framed properly.
Yeah, we can.
I will just try to find him if possible. Just a minute.
He's there.
Yes. I have unmuted him. So, Mr. Tinku Yadav, your question seems a little bit jittery. If you can kindly unmute yourself and ask the question. I have unmuted you from our end. If you would like to ask the question. The question, though, is very simple. How important is flexible supply chain? What is the benefit of this model like this?
So
So
actually,
that
yeah,
has been discussed.
yes, that has been discussed. The
Professor,
third one is there.
yeah, why do manufacturers struggle with capacity planning? I don't think this is a complete question.
So anyway, I think I've given my email IDs and my numbers, so if at all they can directly, if they want to get connected with me, they can do it via me or
Please do.
directly, or you can give it to Professor Gurnani. It will be most welcome, and I'll be answering the questions whatever it comes to my way, because I always feel it, because as I said in my last slide, if you can go to my last slide. Uh, uh, nothing is impossible for a supply chain manager. Everything is possible. Okay, so what we say in a supply chain, this thing. So those in supply chain always we say there is nothing is impossible. We have to make it possible, everything. So that is we take it all across in our blood, and that is what we have and what we are actually basically. So that is if any question comes back to me, I think it will be my pleasure to respond back to those questions.
So I think so, sir. We are done with all the questions.
Right then. Thanks for attention. Thanks for time of everybody. I think.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you from University of Engineering and Management.
Thank you.
And hopefully we will meet physically soon. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Dr. Chatterjee, Professor Gunani, thanks for the time.
Thank you, sir.